put him into a mental asylum because maybe he broke his programming and he
he looks like a victim to me. And like the fact that he's with a bloody Kardashian, and then he spoke out about her to the kid wanting to have an abortion, all this shit. But you know, like body snatchers. I'm going to tell you this quick one.
Yeah.
I wanted to buy this book. I wanted to buy it for years. It was called Body Snatchers, and it was written by a lady who talks about people who are possessed by reptilian entities. And she ends up, the author actually died in the Bahamas, right? Strangely drowned, okay? Just after she released this book. And I wanted to buy it for years, but I wouldn't buy it because it was on Amazon. It was like $500 because it's only a limited number of books.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I'm not paying that. I'm not paying that. But you could buy a second-hand copy for about $20.
Mm.
But I'm always very sus of buying second-hand books because I've heard through like a friend too, he's told me like this happened to him, that you get actual entity attachments onto an object.
Okay.
Sort of like, you know, like in Harry Potter, like the Horcruxes, right? The entities can project themselves onto physical objects. So I'm like, obviously this book's about freaking possession.
Mm.
So I didn't want to buy it. And then I said, bugger it, 1 year. I'm like, I want to read it. I bought it. I got it at home, got it straight out, saw it. I'm like, I'm going to start reading it. I was like midway through the day and I got about 5-6 pages in and I just could not keep my eyes open. I'm like, I'm uncontrollably tired.
Yeah.
And I fell asleep and I had the most vivid dream I've ever had in my life. And it was like in ancient Rome.
Yeah.
And there was this reptilian in this cage.
Wow.
And I had to release, and it freaked me out. And I got the book. I woke up and I was like, I got the book and I threw it in the bin.
Yeah.
No, I've never read it.
That's crazy, dude.
I'll never forget that. Yeah.
I didn't know because I've seen Harry Potter, so I didn't know that was possible. But that is a crazy story.
Yeah.
Man, that's nuts. That's nuts. Yeah, so I don't know, man. Did
you want to talk about reptilians?
Yeah. Let's have a quick chat about reptilians and because it's difficult to tell, isn't it? And you on some levels, it's like you would have seen that video. Obama speaking, and there was that Secret Service agent in the dark in the room. You saw that one, yeah?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
That's a tough one, man. Like I can't. I mean, they're hard to sell anything on video. How do you know? Because it's like,
yeah, it's very easy to doctor.
It can so easily be manipulated, can't it? But yeah, like that is freaky. That video. Like I think I told you before, like the George Bush one's probably the most famous George Bush scene with the slit. But have you ever heard of Sandra Fecht?
No.
She's a Canadian psychologist, and so she works for satanic ritual abuse victims in Canada. And she said she knew nothing about this stuff, and then she started getting clients coming in. She does like trauma therapy. And a lot of them were talking to her about like all these, rituals and stuff they've been in. But she said like there was a certain percentage, like 10, 15% that were talking about reptilian entities that they'd seen rituals. And she said it got to the point there was so many of them and she had to actually acknowledge it was real. And then she even, she started making reports to the police and then they went and sabotaged her office.
Oh, wow.
And started putting satanic imagery and stuff like drawing on the wall. But it's just like there's so many of those stories. Obviously, like with there was like Christine Fitzgerald, who was Princess Diana's best friend, and David Icke. So a lot of this is in The Biggest Secret, but like she said that Diana literally referred to the royals as the lizards. That's what she called them. She said they're literally not human. I mean, there's so many. Like Jordan Maxwell talks about having experiences, like then there's Arizona Wilder. She talks about seeing the royal family shapeshift and stuff like that.
Is that the one?
Like, I haven't had personal experience of that. How do you know?
Is that the person that Dave Icke? I saw that Dave Icke interviewed a woman about that, didn't she? Is that the woman?
It's like called Confessions of the Moon Goddess or something like that. Arizona Wilder, but she actually came out years later and said it was all bullshit. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It,
she's only one of them.
my take on it is that because of because of the way everything works in this world and everything is hidden from us, it
Yeah,
wouldn't be at all far-fetched to say that there are reptilians or other alien races on the planet, you know, and
yeah, 100%.
and for them to be, it's weird though, you know, because like I said about the newsreaders, there's just, it's not just the fact that, like, it's sometimes you can kind of tell, like, if it's just so weird. Like, how do the teeth go sharp, you know, pointy, and the neck's kind of like got a mind of its own. It's breathing or something, and then the neck, you know, it's like going all skinny and shit, and then and the teeth, and then the eyes look weird, and the eyes.
I think those old videos have got more value than the new ones because they can do so much shit with it now. But like some of the old ones are really good.
Yeah, and even this one woman who was apparently shapeshifting on camera, she was getting something in her ear that the person, somebody behind the scenes, was talking to her in her ear, and she's like, he could tell something was wrong with her or something, and she's like, why are you yelling at me? You know, so it'd be weird, like, and it's just I guess it looks funny when you see those cameras with those shots of the camera, because basically their face just kind of distorts, and it could be a camera problem, but at the same time, why is it just their face, you know?
Yeah, and this goes into the whole like the nature of reality too, because like David Icke again, he talks about because obviously he's copped a lot of shit for the the reptilian
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But he does explain it really well because like people go, oh, that's not possible, and he goes, well, if you actually break down what the reality is, because he said that we're living in energetic information fields that then become electrical information, digital information, and holographic, and then it creates a 3D reality.
Mm.
So when someone's possessed, or if you go into the whole bloodline things that the people get the 50-50 split and they can shapeshift, all it is, they're different information fields, and that the eye from the other person is seeing a particular information field. That's all it is. And if you're possessed to a certain extent, you contain that alien or interdimensional information field within you. And this is what they say, that it can, when they do shift, if you believe this, that it happens at times of high emotion.
Right.
And that's when that field can shift, because, and again, it's not a physical shift, it's an energetic shift, because you're not a physical body. And
Sure.
that's always made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I think it kind of comes down to just basically the way the mind works, you know, because the mind sense the, you know, I said signals to the mind or the brain, right? And so you can kind of see, it's the exact same reason why a lot of people can't see what's going on in the world right now. They just can't see it, even though it's playing out right in front of their face. You know,
Yeah.
it's a similar kind of thing. Because you haven't seen it before, if somebody shapeshifted in front of you, you may not even see it then. But until you become more aware of it and conscious around the possibility of it, only then can you see it. You know.
Yeah, that's right. And only some do have the eyes to see, and that there's like, I mean, obviously you can go into all the native cultures and stuff. They've all got these stories, and the ones that
Mm.
have the ability to see into other realms and stuff. They've seen these entities. A lot of people talk about they latch onto the base chakra of the body. They've seen these entities and they actually latch on to the back
Oh yeah.
and control the person through that way. I even know myself, like when I get, so I freaking get smashed every now and then. Do you know what I mean? Like I'll
Yeah.
drink, so just have a few, but every now and then I drink too much, and I like lose it sometimes. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm just like I'm out of there. It's like something
Mm.
else is taking control of me. That's why they
Yeah.
call it spirits.
Exactly. Yeah. Apparently, alcohol was derived from the term alcohol, which is the Arabic for a body eating spirit.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's like, uh, but that's, you see people, and when they're pissed, their eyes kind of go all glassy. It's like there's no soul there anymore, you know, for temporarily.
You can
Right?
see. I've gone home after a big night, and you go to brush your teeth, whatever. You look in the mirror, and you don't look the same. You can't quite pin it. Do you know what I mean? It does like it does something to your eyes.
Oh yeah, absolutely, it does something to your eyes. Uh, I think it's just kind of like it does a lot of things, right? You know, it does a lot of things to you. But yeah, you do. You
Yeah.
kind of you look a little like Andrews at a press conference.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to bed. I don't like what I see in the mirror. That's
Yeah, and it's interesting as well because a lot of people, we all have like a dark side, you know, right? We all have a dark side, and sometimes when we drink too much, that thing comes out, right? It's like you don't have control over it necessarily, and then you know, like you're not yourself in that moment, you know.
yeah. And I've had to look at that a lot myself because like I've got these self-sabotage programs.
Oh yeah, it's
And you
human
got
nature. We all do.
and it's so I'm like, I go, why do I drink? Like sometimes I drink really hard. And I'm like, it's escapism. That's what it is. 100% for me. And I even
Absolutely.
enjoy I enjoy like the hungover feeling too. Cause it's like, I'm just going to sit here. It's like, I can finally sort of chill out.
Relax.
And that's the only time I can ever watch a movie. So
Okay.
I'm not all like mainstream TV. It's the only time, and it's like, but it's self-sabotage because it's like I'm knocking myself out, so I don't have to look at all this other stuff that's happening in the world. I think that's what's happening subconsciously, you know.
Makes sense. I mean, I used to drink every weekend and sometimes during the week as well when I was able to. And
Yeah,
when I stopped drinking, I looked back on it and realized exactly what it was. Like it's an escape, you know, it's an escape and it's also a way to deal with some stuff that you don't want to deal with. You know, it's like, well, I'll just
yeah,
drink these few beers and I'll feel good, you know, in that moment. It's a short-term gratification type thing. And it takes a lot
yeah.
for someone to kind of get to the core of why they're doing, whether it's drugs or drink or whatever it is, you know, some whatever escape. It takes a lot for a person to kind of get to the core of that because most people would just say, well, I really enjoy drinking, but that's not the reason at all. You know, that's just like,
Yeah.
if you think of it as an onion, that's just like the outer shell of the onion. It's like the thin part of the onion. That's like the first reason. You got to keep asking yourself why, you know, keep asking yourself that why question until you get
I
to the
love that
core.
introspection. That's what I loved Mike Tyson's book because he's the most introspective person I've ever come across. It's like he just everything he does, he looks back at his past and his behaviors and why he does them, and can learn a
Mm.
lot from Mike Tyson actually. But he's very truthful. He's very honest about every mistake he's ever made too. And it's like, I guess we got to do that as well, don't we?
Yeah, I think it's
You got
important
to
to,
own your bad side.
yeah, not to just be honest with yourself, but also forgive yourself for whatever it is that you've done, you know, because you
Yeah,
self-forgiveness is one of the biggest things because the less you can forgive yourself, the more resentment you're going to hold for yourself, right? And you're just holding on to this well, you should be forgiving everybody really as well, because you know, you more you're just holding on to this resentment, onto this anger, and forgiving yourself, I think, is one of, I don't want to say it's the easiest. It's easier out of, you know, forgiving yourself or somebody else. It could be, it may not be, but you know, at least you can start there, you know, and because I think that forgiving, like there was a guy a long time ago who hard to really to explain, but he did something to me in primary school, and I held, I think, quite a lot of resentment for that, you know, for a very long time. But when I was in Melbourne, I kind of wrote him a letter. Like I didn't send it to him. I just wrote him a letter because I was reading this book and it said, if you know, one of the exercises it said to do that. So I was like, okay, I'll write a letter to this person, and I just signed it off, and it made me actually think about like the actions, you know, that he took, uh, and because a lot of things that happen to you when you're a kid, you assume that it's your fault, right?
mhm.
When it's not the case at all. And I think one of the biggest things that I got from that exercise was just the forgiveness of him, but also the forgiveness for myself because I thought it was my fault. You know?
Yeah.
Mm.
Sure, that's so cool you said that because like when I spoke to Rachel Vaughan a few weeks, probably a month ago, and she's a satanic ritual abuse victim. People don't know,
Oh, from
and
Adelaide, Adelaide woman.
yeah, and she spoke. And I've heard this off multiple victims, or sorry, survivors, that the best way to heal and recover is through writing. So what you just said is, and you said that it made you go back into the experience, and that's because what they say with the trauma is you're using logic, and then as well as the right side of the brain through the act of writing. And it actually connects the hemispheres and can help build neural pathways, and it's a way of recovery. So
Right.
that's pretty cool you said that. Yeah,
Makes sense. I think that because of like you said, with the neural pathways, what's happening is you're kind of, in some ways, maybe you're reliving this experience, and you're just strengthening that neural pathway. But when you create a new neural pathway, or when you start writing a new version of the story or whatever it is, then you kind of start to weaken that pathway, and then slowly strengthen the other one,
Yeah.
And
like severe trauma, or any trauma, can actually sever pathways. And that's where you get suppressed memories, because they're actually blocked by the severing of the pathway.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And that's what, that goes back into like what the Nazis were doing, because they discovered this, or like perfected it, how to sever the pathways.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, and that's how you can actually, like someone say, like a Katy Perry, if you're under mind control, they don't even know they're under it, because the trauma is it's compartmentalized in the brain. It's severed. It's blocked away into a compartment, and they do. It's scientific in the way that they do the trauma, or can do.
Right, but even in with what's going on in the world right now, there are many people who don't even know they're being controlled. Right, and brainwashed.
Yeah, exactly. It's the exact same thing, isn't it? On the collective scale.
Yeah. People think.
Dude, I think the video is going to run out. I've set it for an hour and a half.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, but we got a pretty long one anyway.
Can it run after or not?
Huh?
Can it run later than that? I don't know. Or will it just end?
It will probably have a timer. It'll probably say this will end soon, and then it will have a countdown. But we could probably end it now if you like, and maybe do another one another time.
Yeah, man. Yeah, shit, it went quick anyway, didn't it?
Yeah, these conversations typically do. It was hopefully something big will happen in the next 19th of April has been and gone. And did anything happen?
When was that? It was Thursday. Nothing, mate.
2 days ago. Yeah, nothing. But maybe, the timeline isn't always, dates aren't always, timelines are ever moving, right? So something may happen this month, and
it's like beyond ever worrying about like what and when. I think that's like eventually we're going to have hit this point where like collective action is going to actually drive this. But I can't see a big collective action happening without some sort of traumatic event. I can't. Everything's just sort of everything's lulled at the moment. It's sort of pretty normal here now. It's basically almost back to how it was before all this stuff. If you take away all the
same here.
Some of the bullshit, but like the places I go, they're not even asking for anything. It's almost back to normal, and it's like it sort of pissed me off too, because I'm like, we were just getting there. We just needed one more hard lockdown or something. I think it's got to be the economy. I think when that happens, it's going to hurt a lot of people. Then you might get some collective action, some collective response, but like I can't see it happening at the moment because people have got their comforts. It's going back to how it was.
Yeah, I agree with you about the lockdown thing, or something that's going to make people want to rise up, because it's the only people that are really doing anything are the people that know, and the people that don't know just think everything's going to blow over. Once everybody gets injected, then everything will blow over. But Hunt came out and said that even with the jab, you're still not going to be able to travel to 2024. So I don't see why that's not waking people up.
We're just in the mind control is unbelievable. I really thought after last year, I thought more people would see it, and it has been encouraging. It's like I've seen a lot of people wake up, but it's not enough. It's not enough yet. And there's sort of that anger component of waking up too. There's not enough people are angry. They want full control of the world and your body. We are slaves. We are.
Yeah, absolutely.
but we're happy slaves, and that's like what Aldous Huxley spoke about, that the people will
I got to
love their
read that.
service.
I got to read Brave New World and Animal Farm. I think I read Brave New World in high school or something, and I didn't really understand it back then. And
just watch the movie, mate.
oh yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Yeah.
But Huxley and Orwell, they were. Do you think they just knew, or were they were part of it and just giving a warning?
No, well, they were Fabian. They were both Fabians in the Fabian Society. Huxley taught Orwell. He was his French teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were in the same seat. I mean, he wasn't a bloody prophet or a psychic. He knew what was coming.
Yeah.
That's David Icke's always said that too. He's like, he's been right for so many years, and they're like, well, how do you know this? He's like, I'm not pulling it out of the ether.
Yeah.
All this is like, they document what they're going to do. They've documented it for decades, hundreds of years.
Where did he find that information from, though? Like, where would pre all this? Because he's one of the few guys of the time doing it. It kind of easier for us to get information now, but where would he have got all his information? Well, maybe not all of it.
It's pretty difficult. Well, it's quite interesting, his story, because he does. I don't want to speak on his behalf, but he had a spiritual experience.
I heard about that.
And he was flooded with sort of information and stuff like that. But then he said what he was told by this voice or whatever was that sometimes information would come to him, and or they would steer it on his path. And he said he would literally was just getting handed documents, papers. He'd run into the right person. He'd get, do you know what I mean? And he talks about it's a good lesson, because he talks about it as the synchronistic nature of life. And he said once you're like, yeah, I'm going for it, everything just starts to open up.
Just falls into place. Like you meet the right people, and
he said he never went looking for it.
That's really interesting.
And then obviously after you write a few books, then people are coming to you all the time, aren't they? Whistleblowers.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? Like, I don't know. I mean, imagine.
I mean, you would have come across this before too. Like, I'm sure, like you just come across a new subject. Like I remember when the Mandela effect, I started hearing about that, like 2014 or whatever. I didn't know anything about it before that, and then it was just everywhere. I couldn't I was just getting people were like, oh, have you seen this? And I'm just, a new theme comes in, and then it's just boom, boom, and that's the universe.
True.
It's just synchronistically, this is and what David Icke talks about, the puzzle pieces got given to him in the correct order. You need to learn this. You need to learn about the nature of reality before you can talk about this. It's great. That's how things work, isn't it? If you go with the flow.
I think so. I do understand what you mean. Like when you're kind of tapped into a certain thing, certain things will just pop up, whether it's on like your YouTube feed or someone will send you something. Yeah. So it's kind of similar. For me, I was kind of the opposite. Like I didn't know anything about how I thought the universe worked or whatever necessarily until probably 2017, 2018. But I'd already caught wind of the plan, should I say, the New World Order plan, back in 2014, and kind of pieced certain things together through all the research I did, with different things. And then, but it wasn't until 2020 when I really started to learn more, because I didn't know anything about I knew a little bit about the tunnels, but didn't know anything about the children so much, and the party drug that they have. Yeah, I didn't know anything about that. But so yeah, 2020 was a big eye opener. But at that point, I already had a really good grounding on how the universe works, or how certain things work, let's say, in the universe, and it was easier for me to piece things together, and also to understand why so many people are stuck in the matrix, really, because it's all in the mind. When you know how the human mind works, that's like your biggest key. I think one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle. When you know how the human mind works, you can see how it all kind of plays to meshes together, and you can see how people are so blindsided by the nature of life.
Once you obviously he talks about when you got cracked open, and then it just, once you get cracked open, it allows you to be open enough to get cracked open a bit more.
Yeah.
It just keeps going, doesn't it?
Does. Yeah. Do you ever feel like, because you've you've clearly been on this path for a real long time. Do you ever feel like you've kind of hit the bottom of the rabbit hole, or do you feel like just kind of finding out new stuff all the time?
I do. I did like a few years ago, and I always like what's the next aha moment? Like I hadn't had one. Mandela effect. That was the last sort of big aha. And then when Max Egan started putting up a lot of stuff about the Tartaria, and then I was like, I don't know nothing. That just opened me. I'm like, what is our real history? We don't know history.
Exactly.
We don't and I think that he actually says something really good too. I love what he says about this, that because people always argue over history and what's reality and do ETs exist, all this sort of, is the earth flat, is it whatever. And his whole philosophy is, let's establish freedom, then we'll work all the rest of that shit out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Stop fighting over. And I think that's true. I think when we get freedom back onto this planet, then we'll learn about what's real, because we'll have the right to know about what's real, and we're not slaves and being suppressed from information. We can go out and investigate and look without, So yeah, man, there's heaps more to learn. We don't know shit even now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree. I think the freedom comes first, and because because you think about all the different theories and things that are happening and stuff, and it does just create a lot of division. As with family and friends, sometimes with different belief systems that you hold, and if we were all just on that one goal of freedom, like we would have achieved freedom a long time ago if we all kind of aligned ourselves with that one goal, and then later on, we can kind of figure out what's what.
Yeah. But the first step for most people is to acknowledge that you're a slave.
That's a tough thing to.
You have to acknowledge you're a slave. You might be a happy little slave, but you're still a slave.
Yeah, it's tough to swallow that one. I think that's the whole. But it's true, isn't it? Because a lot of people don't think that. And sometimes I had somebody say to me, "Well, I'm not a slave," and I was like, "Well, really?" I wasn't even talking about. I don't know what we were talking about. It was something to do with maybe the financial system or something. I don't know. And I didn't even know why they used that term. Why would they use that term? But they did, and it was interesting. And I was like, well, if you must know. But I didn't go into it.
They're in a prison cell and they can't see the bars.
100%.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's what I mean, man. There's got to be something that breaks this. Something's got to happen. And I don't think it's going to be a good thing. It could be the financial collapse. That's when people are going to realize you're a slave, because everything you owned is jack shit. It's all digital crap that doesn't exist. And some fake fiat currency, Yeah. And that is probably almost the biggest control they've got over us is stealing our energy through wealth, real wealth.
Yeah, making you a slave to money. And you're working how many hours a day or sometimes multiple jobs, and
Well, you're a time slave, aren't you? It's not even money, because I'm giving my energy and my time to spend most of my life, most of my day doing something for most people that they don't want to do.
Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, there's a better way. There's a better way.
That was kind of one of the biggest questions that I asked myself just pretty much after I started accounting. I was like, there has to be more to life than working a job you hate and then just getting drunk 2 nights in a row and then doing it all over again the next week, week in, week out. Because what's the point of life? If that's what you're going to do, you're going to spend 40 years or something of your life, more just being miserable. I was miserable anyway, and I can't speak for everyone because some people really enjoy their job, but at the same time, you're still giving 40 hours a week, 50 hours a week or whatever it is to this thing just to live, Yeah.
That's all what we said before, that's Neo in the Matrix. What is the Matrix? You're asking the question you wanted to know. It was like this shit's like, it's not fulfilling me. What am I doing here? What's the purpose of this stuff? What is going on? What is this control system? And you wanted to know. A lot of people don't want to know. A lot of people don't want to know. That's the problem.
I think people want to know, but they because you must ask yourself the question at some point, like, do you think maybe not, because
Mate, I know people, they don't want to know. They don't want to know nothing.
I
They
didn't know
don't
anything.
care.
I didn't know anything then. I was only like 24 or something, fresh out of uni, first couple of weeks in, and just realized, but I didn't know anything about anything,
Yeah.
All I knew is that
That's
I didn't want to do that, and
yeah.
yeah.
I was telling people about all these pedophiles in the Australian government giving names years ago. And like people just like, what they tell me, I don't care. Why would I care about that? I'm like, how can you not care about that? And like, how is that not something that you're not interested in? Like, this is crazy. How can you not? They don't want to know. They can't answer, because if I believe that, my entire belief or the way I view the world, everything has to change. And I'm not prepared to do that because I'm happy with my little comfy sort of reality. And then the other part is like what Passio talks about, that if I acknowledge that that's happening, does that give some responsibility to me? Do I have to do something about that? Do I have to tell? That's what it's about. It's, I don't want to look at that because I don't want to have to do anything about that. That's how I see it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the biggest problems we're in right now, is that unfortunately we've all let this happen. And it's easy for someone to look at a country like Israel and see their jab passports rolling out and say, well, it's not happening in my country,
Exactly.
And then, but it will, you know what I mean? Like, it has to start somewhere, just because it's happening somewhere on the other side of the world doesn't mean it's not going to come to, to a neighborhood near you. It's like,
yeah.
And that's the problem. It's the victim mentality. It's like, well, it's not my problem because, and that's, I was at the supermarket, and this is just a silly example, but it highlights pretty much exactly what the biggest problem is. Is like, I was near the ice cream section, and some dude was in there getting some ice creams out, and he left the door open, just left. And then there was like a woman there, and her daughter was there, and one of the workers was over there, and the woman was like looking in, and the door was open. The daughter was just standing there, and I was just looking at her and was like, is anyone going to close this? Like, but that's exactly my point. Nobody, because they didn't do it, they didn't close it. So I ended up closing it. But that's the whole reason we're in this problem, because it's nobody's fault. It's not our responsibility, but it's absolutely our responsibility. Just because we didn't.
That's right. Yeah, and like these cabal types, it's not their fault either. It's our fault. It's our fault. We've tolerated wrong behavior, and we've tolerated too long, haven't we? So like, it is our fault. That's what this whole thing's about. You got to look at yourself, what we can do, even if it's something small. But like, yeah, we got to take some ownership for this bloody mess that we're in.
Yeah, and if you don't want to say it's your fault, that's fine. But it's definitely our responsibility to fix it. It's certain things will happen in your life that may not be your fault, but only you can fix that thing in your life, whatever that is. So it's better just to take that ownership, whether it's your fault or not, and just to say, I'm gonna take ownership of that and just fix it, rather than go, oh, it was his fault, that person's fault, or this person did something to me at work or whatever, and just play the blame game, because that will get us nowhere.
Yeah, it's like a self-perpetuating cycle too, isn't it? And that's I think that's what we're here at this time to do. We're here to break that cycle, and like, this has been going on for thousands of years, if not much, eons, depending if you want to go like galactic and shit like that. But like, that's what I think that's what we're here to do. And it's like, people say it's not happening quick enough. Well, it freaking amped up last year, didn't it? But like, yeah, this lull's killing me, man. This lull's killing me. I want something, even if it's bad. Do something.
You will see some action.
Because like, I want to see action from the people. I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to do. Just like keep trying to put out information, I guess.
I think that's a good point, because even though you're aware of what's going on, and there's many other people that are aware of what's going on, other than the fact that there are certain people, hitting the government with class actions and things like that. There are some certain people. There's one dude I follow on Instagram who's been going around to different businesses and getting them to put on different information on their computer screens about the jab and stuff like that, which I think is amazing initiative. I'm not doing any of that. Could I be doing more? Absolutely, I could be doing more. but that it's a good question to ask. Like, what else can I do? You know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I don't know, man.
And unfortunately,
but yeah, look, we just have to see what plays out. We're probably gonna have to take more action ourselves eventually too, aren't we?
yes, 100%. Yeah, and I'm ready to, but it's like, on one hand, you know, you're a leader by putting out this information. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we still need some higher up leadership to kind of tell us what else we need to do. We're happy to do the work, but we kind of, you know what I mean?
And I said this years ago too, because I just before COVID happened, I came back. I was speaking to my sister-in-law, and they were putting out stuff about jabs then. And she was getting worried about it, and I'm like, something's got to happen. These people the people are never gonna wake up. I said it has to be done from the inside to some level, and there has to be some sort of bloody divine intervention or whatever. And then like it literally happens. Yeah. You're right. There has to be people at the top. That's if there's not, they hold all the power. I mean, we hold the power by complying, but the people, you know, they're controlling the minds of the people.
And that's
how do you get the people to take back their power when they don't know they have any power? That's the issue.
It's really it's a really good question, because even coming into the information like last year and being aware of what's going on and being thrust into the beginnings of the end, right? Of what could be the end. I don't want to say the end, because I don't think it's going to happen, but it does take a lot to kind of figure out that you have more power. You know, somebody said to me like, well, the government has more clout than we do. And I was like, no, they work for us. Don't forget that. Like, they're public servants. You know, we have all the power. We decide. We should decide who gets in and who doesn't. And if they're not doing what we want to do, then we have the power to get them out, right? But I guess people forget that. We don't know our rights. We really don't. And that's the biggest problem. One of the biggest problems is we don't know our rights. If everybody knew their rights and if everybody trusted themselves, this thing would have been over in 2 seconds last year, you know?
And that's like the most powerful word in the English language is no. And that's the Matrix movie again. That's when Neo realizes his power and he stops the bullets. He just says, no. That's it.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's what I was telling you. It just said, he reached the point, no. Yeah. And it's like, actually, I had a friend, I went up to Brisbane and so I like they're crazy on QR codes there. And I'm like,
oh, wow.
I went to a couple of places and like, they just won't let you go in. And I'm like, oh, my name's Shane Smith. What's your email? Shane Smith. Well, so I wouldn't QR code, so I just give them fake name. And then she's just like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm like, just give me a fake. I go, just give me a fake name. She's like, no, I'm not doing it. We're not QR coding. We don't have to do that. And blah, blah. And went on forever. And then she asked to speak to the manager. She got their details. She's going to come. And I'm like, that was good. And then I looked at myself and I'm like, I'm being a bit of a bitch actually, but I'm still complying, aren't I?
Sure. Yeah.
And so after that, ever since then, I have not. Every single time I've said no, I'm not doing it.
You got to. I think you have to. I'm guilty of that too. If they ask me for it, I just do a fake name. But if they don't ask me, I just don't do it. Sometimes, even if they're pretty relaxed on it here. So even though some restaurants will say you have to do it, if somebody on the table is already doing it, then I just won't do it. But you know,
it's the same here. They don't.
I shouldn't do that either. I should probably just say no. None of us are doing it. You know, it's stupid.
Brisbane's the worst, mate. Yeah, absolutely mental up there.
Yeah,
couldn't believe it.
It's interesting because they haven't had too much of a crazy time until recently.
Nothing. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go anyway, man.
Yeah, me too.
That was good having a chat anyway. We'll be in touch, yeah?
Yeah, sounds good. We'll wait to see what happens over the next week or two, and then we'll hook up for another chat, hopefully.
Let's do it.
See what happens with Mr. Andrews and
yeah. Oh shit, what's 2 weeks gonna be? Mid-May. Mate, this year will be over.
Yeah, it'll be over for almost half the year gone.
We'll be sitting there in 2024 going, hey, what are they going to do there? I don't know. But yeah, we'll see. We'll have a chat in a couple of weeks, maybe.
We'll be robots by then, I think.
Oh, man.
All right, take care.
I'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
See you, buddy.